This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things, like if you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands. I am your co-host, joined by
Steve Yurko.
Hey, Steve.
Hello, Tara.
We have Tara.
Well, I was doing a little Midwestern accent for you there. Or it'd be Tara.
I like that. I was calling someone who's helped us out with our podcast so much, Kara Krupnik. Shout out Kara. But I called her Kara the other day, and I felt so dumb. Because as a Tara, I default to that A sound.
Right.
Yeah, but I will never get it wrong again. But we have a really great guest today who worked with a lot of different departments. I don't totally understand her job, so I'm excited for her to clarify exactly what it was. And we got some good questions from the listeners. Her name is Laura Cohen. We'll be with her in just a moment. I just wanted to take an opportunity to remind you guys that we are always looking for lost media. So if you are one of those kids who set your VHS recorder on Saturday mornings and has maybe some cool promos or some shows that maybe you don't even realize are lost media, we would love to help you convert them. So hit us up at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com. Steve, are you sure you're not sitting on any lost media? Check under your seat.
No.
Guess
what?
You really did look.
It's all the remaining episodes of Mew Mew Power.
Wouldn't that be crazy if it
right
just
under
appeared?
my nose?
Just a magician just stuck it in there. What a bummer, man. Yeah, so please, if you know someone who you think may be recorded, maybe the kid down the street was had a crazy VCR VHS tape collection.
And then somehow converted them digitally. But we'll also take tapes. You know?
Yeah, we'll take the tapes. Yeah, hit up your old friend from down the block. All of our links to stuff that you can check out are in the show notes. What's the most important of those, though, Steven?
Most important of all, everything you need to know about our show, you could go to our website. That's 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4 in that URL. Go there, and that's like every episode is posted there. All links to our social media, also links to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Same thing with the number 4. Mm-hmm. If you join us there, subscribe to us on Patreon. You get episodes week early.
I love when you do it. Yep.
Week early, ad free. You'll be able to join our Discord and tons of other bonus stuff we're posting up on there.
Yep. So without further ado, here is Laura Cohen. Our guest today is Laura Cohen. Now, this is how Laura described her job to me. She said she was the director of programming and scheduling. She worked with the on-air promotions department, legal, sales, standards and practices, the broadcast center out in LA. basically, it sounds like you were just running the show, but please explain what your job was and why you were involved with so many other departments. And hi, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you. So the job was a bit of an umbrella job, and it went from soup to nuts. So I had to make sure that in the end, everything got on the air or I was in a lot of trouble. Let me start there. I'll start with that. And
no pressure. Yeah, just get on the air.
Just make it happen. And that had a lot of different tangents to it. So we had regular shows, which I know you've interviewed a lot of people. You've done them yourself. That was its own animal, like roaring on the other side of the office. Then we had the promo team that was doing their whole thing. Then we had the standards and practices team, and we had the sales teams, and we had the people making interstitials, and all of this madness had to come together in one place at one time. And I had to make sure that happened. I wasn't running all those departments. It's not what I was doing. But in the end,
but you were kind of connective tissue in a way.
Yes. It was kind of like the glue to make sure that it did all come together. And in the end, we had to make sure that everything was out to the broadcast center out in LA. And I worked with a guy out there for the whole time and became like fast friends with him because we had to tolerate each other because I was constantly asking him for favors, constantly. And that's what it was. So it was like a conglomerate because so many things had to fall into place at one time to make this machine go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go rewind a tiny bit. What qualified you for this job? What did you study?
Absolutely nothing. No. So it was a little bit of it was interesting. So my history in television was I had worked at Comedy Central for a while. I was doing programming over there. I was doing co-productions. I seem to work in departments that have two names. That's how it goes. It's a two-name situation. It's my thing. And so I did that. Okay, that was like part one. And then I moved over to VH1 and I was doing acquisitions and co-productions. So another twofer. Yeah. And that job was also a bit of a mishmash because they basically had people doing different things connected to different types of media. So I ended up being the record label contact and I was making deals for movies and concerts and specials. And as part of that, I had to be involved with legal. And I had to be involved with programming and I had to be involved with production. So it was, again, a little bit of a mishmash going on there. So I get a phone call from Mark Chusid, who I don't know if you've crossed paths with Mark. No. Okay.
That's a
Got
new
a
name.
call
Great.
from Mark Chusid. Yeah, there you go. There's one. And I used to work with him at Comedy Central. And he calls me up and he said, there's a network that's going to be getting off the ground and this is what it's called. And he was describing it to me. And it was actually foreign to me, like in the sense that I was not an anime person, and I was like, what's going on here? Like, where does this story end? What's happening? What are you asking me?
And this was like 2001-ish, right?
Yeah, it was like a little bit before. Yeah, actually, you're right. I'm glad you're keeping track. Yeah, you're exactly right.
I read your LinkedIn. I mean, that's where we get all our best information.
Oh my God, I have to update that. So yes, you're right. You're right. So he's on and on about this whole thing. And in the end, he says to me, and I will never forget this, he says, do you want to drive the bus? You have to be ready to drive the bus. And I'm in my head laughing, going, I'm a city girl. I take the subway. But I get what you mean, Mark. I get what you mean. You have to be ready to drive the bus. And they need a programmer. And I know you did this. I don't know. And I thought, you know what? This is too cool not to try. Like, I know that I don't have my hand dipped in this pool of animation, but there were other things they needed. And I thought, why not? Like, why not give it a shot? So that's how it started. It was all about driving the bus. And he could not have been more accurate in that statement. So that's where it happened. It wasn't that I was qualified in that sense. I was qualified in the other sense.
Well, you were in that, like, you knew how to talk to different departments. Like, it's almost like learning their lingo and then being the producer. That it's a producing job in a lot of ways.
Yes, it had that feel to it. It did. That connective tissue, like you said, that feel to it. You had to know enough about enough. You had to be an inch deep and a mile wide, as they say.
And an organized person. Like, this can't be a person that, I feel like this is a person who loves spreadsheets. Like I do. It's my love language. Okay, so you interview, who did you interview with? Was it Norman or Al or?
Yeah. So I ended up, I remember interviewing with, I want to say Michael Atanasio. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
That's ringing a bell. That could have been an HR person. Maybe it's possible.
I think he was a producer. He wasn't the main guy, but I definitely met him. But I interviewed with Norman, and I remember feeling like Norman was really smart. Like, I remember sitting there and thinking, this is the guy for the job, right? I've met him for 10 minutes and wow, okay, awesome. So, and he asked me all kinds of things. And, he like looks you right in the eye when he talks to you. And I loved that about him.
Yeah.
So I just sort of told him the truth. I really did. I said, this is why I'm here. And this is the phone call I got. This is what I can offer to you. So I talked with him for quite a while. And in the end, I guess it worked out okay. I also met with John Gansley, who was actually HR. So it was Norman, Michael, Gansley. I didn't cross paths with Al until a little bit later.
Because he was in a whole different office uptown somewhere. We never saw him. Yeah.
We didn't, right. He was like the pie in the sky, up on 50-something street. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned Norman too. And like, I sent him an email today and I said, hey, I just want you to know, like, people are saying really nice things about you behind your back. Because I feel like we don't hear that enough when that happens. But, for the good and the bad and the weird of an overall company, people who were creatives there felt very comfortable, like, doing their thing under his watch. Like, he made that thrive. And
yes.
and again, like, we talk about this, these were young people running this company. Like,
it's true.
Amazing.
I know. When I look back, I think, oh my God, like, they trusted us with what? Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, are you kidding me right now?
Totally.
And that's how, and he was also young.
Yes.
Like, Norman was not an old person by any means.
Because he's still not.
No, he's still not. So
that means he was really young then.
He was really young then. And I remember having a really funny conversation with him at some point. And am I allowed to talk about like personal like aspects and
as
stuff?
long as you're comfortable with it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember is that okay, Steve? Yeah, okay.
I guess I have final say.
Steve, share something personal
too. Make sure that this is like...
let's be vulnerable.
Let's get real.
Here we go. So anyway, so we had this conversation one day, Norman and I, and he said to me, by the time I'm a certain age, I'm going to stop biting my nails. That's what it said. I'm going to stop biting my nails. All I could think to myself was, you're like Superman. Like, of course you're going to you figured out how to run the uptown, the downtown, the ins, the outs. Like, we used to call him right brain, left brain. I don't know if he knew that. But it's coming out now, right brain, left brain, because he could do it all. It didn't matter what you needed, whether it was a spreadsheet or an Excel formula or like super awesome creative feedback. He had it going all around 24/7. So yeah. But the nail biting thing, I'm like, of course you can stop biting your nails.
And of course, that's your big vice. You're like,
that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So everything else is, okay. So you get this job.
Yes.
So by this point, because we're talking 2002, I think now.
Yes.
Pokemon is thriving. So you're walking into, and I guess, Steve, help me. Steve's great with dates. So Yu-Gi-Oh's already started by that point, right?
2001?
Yeah, 2001, 2002. So Yu-Gi-Oh's on? Yeah. So what shows are happening when you're walking into all this?
Let's see. Gosh, I feel like we have to think about this now. I feel like you're going to have to help. I think it was One Piece.
One Piece was like 2000.
That was a little later? Okay, I missed that one.
4.
Gosh, maybe Kirby. Like having to go back.
Sonic.
Kirby,
Sonic would have been
Sonic. The Turtles were on. I know Pokemon was on.
Pokemon was definitely.
Pokemon was obviously on.
Ultraman Tiga.
Ultraman was on. We had something sort of live actiony and strange that I can't remember the name of. And then the stuff came later that hit the the ground running, which was Bratz and Winx and that other stuff. And we had the EI,
the girl stuff. The girl stuff that came up later.
Yeah. And I do remember those other shows being there and kind of having to figure out just to get an idea of what these things were about so I could respect them the way they needed to be respected, having not been like a connoisseur of the subject matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were dealing with like Comedy Central and VH1 and there was some censorship there, but this was probably a whole new level of censorship and standards and practices. And
Yes, it was.
so we get
It
so
was.
many questions about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a huge part of our everyday life. And
Okay.
it really was. I mean, there were certain things like you can imagine that you can do and can't do. And you really had to, it was such a, oh my God, it was like such a delicate balance. By the time things got to our department, that was already done, minus the promos and the interstitials. Like we had to make sure we were involved in getting that stuff going. But for the shows, it was already done. And you just, one of the things I remember so clearly was that you could never tell a child what to do. You had to make sure that they knew they had a chance. Like whenever we did our promotions, you could never say, "You're gonna win a brand new car." It was you have a chance to win a brand new car, even though we didn't give away cars. You get what I'm saying here.
Right,
So that
right.
was basically like that was a big deal. So the language was parsed out word by word, verb by verb, to make sure we didn't say anything that would set an expectation that would get a lot of people in trouble. And on top of it, we also had to make sure we didn't make references to products. We had to be careful. We couldn't say certain words like, I don't think we could even say the word Olympics. There were certain things that you just couldn't say.
It's like trademark Super Bowl. You can't say.
Could say the
big
Super Bowl.
game.
The big game, however you wanted to say it. And I remember I'm now like having like flashbacks now of things like you couldn't say the word death. You could you couldn't make reference
Shadow
to
realm.
that. They were talking about the shadow realm. And again, like you probably know more about that than I do, but there was just this constant, and every single thing would go up to standards. It didn't matter what it was. If it was one sentence, it had to go up there and it had to be assessed, and you were biting your nails. You could have the words and, but, the, and chair.
Norman
and
was biting his nails.
Norman,
Sorry.
correction, you are correct. Norman was biting his nails, and you sat there going, "Please approve it, because if they decide the word and is no good, we're in so much trouble." And it was just this constant cloud over your head.
Well, now, when you talk about that, you're talking about at the networks, or was there standards and practices in-house at 4Kids that I don't know about?
Not really. No, you're right.
Okay.
We had to send it up to Fox, and, we had a legal team, and they were adept for sure. But in the end, it didn't matter what anybody in the four walls said. It had to leave the building and come back. I remember one time, I remember her name, I think was Avery. I think her name was Avery. She was running S&P up there, and we were doing some sort of fun fact. It was like a fun fact thing for the kids. And it said, true or false, a human being can lick their elbow. And obviously it was false. We cannot, lick our elbows. Well,
Shit,
guess
I'm gonna
what?
have to try that.
Guess what, everyone? We were wrong. And Avery from uptown got on a subway and came downtown, walked into the office, flipped her elbow around. She's like, something, this is actually possible. And I thought, oh my God.
So she's a contortionist, basically.
100%.
Okay, so here's a fun fact. Steve was one of those kids entering the contests.
Steve, you
At least
were?
once.
Really?
He was a finalist. I'm bragging on his behalf.
I love that. This
Thanks,
is
Mom.
all coming. This is coming around in real time, Steve. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hope you weren't misled to think you were going to win a car. I
I don't think there was
apologize.
any. I don't think I had a list of demands. No, it was an art contest for Shaman King. If you remember that.
I do remember Shaman King. And how did you do in the end? You were one
The
of-
contest was. Yeah, it was like I was a finalist. I think amongst I don't know how many, because like the finalists all got their like drawings shown on TV.
Oh,
but
yeah.
like the grand prize winner, I think like the character they designed would be implemented into a video game. So like a Shaman King video game.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good
That's
prize.
pretty cool. That's a pretty
That was
good
cool, yeah.
prize. Yeah, we came up with some good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, got a letter from the company, and then they
Did
gave me a
Did
free
I
copy
write
of
it?
a
Did I
game,
sign
so.
it, Laura?
probably
I don't know.
did.
Did I-
I hope that's somewhere. I feel like I wouldn't have thrown that out. So, but that's
That's it.
gonna be
That's
a lot of
cool.
digging.
Congratulations. It's kind of like when they say
Thank you.
people win the lottery, you never find out who. Like, I'm happy that to meet you and know that this was a thing for you. That's cool.
As opposed to the lottery, I wouldn't be telling the world I won the lottery. I think I'd keep that on the down low.
But through the podcast, we've posted like on our social media, and people have said, "Oh yeah, I won a towel. Oh, I won this." Oh, it's like I was so happy to see the people, they put faces with the
Yeah.
names of like, oh, they actually sent this stuff out.
No, it's real.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
For over 50 years, Burlington's legacy has been great deals on coats for all weather conditions. So before you're caught unprepared for the winter weather, head to Burlington for name brands, quality items, and surprising fits for every family member. Stock up on coats, sweaters, and accessories before the cold hits, so you can finally stop avoiding the elements and start living comfortably. Warm up at your nearest Burlington location less than 1 mile away. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
One of the first questions we had from someone named Kat Senti was what censorship decisions were made by your department. So the shows themselves, were you getting final word on those shows, or really that was all the work of the show producers?
You mean in terms of standards and practices?
Yeah, like
that kind of stuff.
Censorship, or like the cleavage, making the shirts higher, and all that.
Like the show side of it was it was complete by the time it got to us, where we had to really be a lot more hands-on were promos and interstitials, anything that was outside the realm of regular programming. Okay. And that's what we had to. And, you become somewhat of an expert, but still you can get a curveball or two. So it was never 100% until it was 100%. And that stuff, that was one of the surprising things about the network overall, is that it was not a 24/7 network. Okay. So you would think, or I would think, all of us did, that it would be a little bit more controllable, I guess is the way to say it, but it was not. It was balls to the wall. It was busy all the time. There were so many moving parts and pieces, and all these systems in place to make sure everything was approved. But at the same time, I mean, we'd be sending things out super last minute. Again, like calling the net center out in LA and saying, please keep your eye out. This is coming in. It's sliding into home like 20 minutes before air. And it was a lot, considering we weren't a 24/7 network. It was surprising.
Yeah. I mean, we've been hearing about the crazy deadlines at this company that seem to be crazier than other places. Was that your experience as well?
It was a little crazy. It was, yeah.
Okay.
It was. And even in the beginning, you would ask me about coming on board. And I remember thinking, usually you would hire the director of programming or programming director, whatever you want to call it, way before I got hired. I mean, I got hired pretty close to the deadline of when we actually needed to air.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So were you were the person for Foxbox and WB, or were you strictly like, how did that work?
It was all one big pile. It was all one big pile, right? So we were doing both.
And when you say net center in LA, I don't actually know what that means.
The ops center, the operations center in LA was where we had to send everything out. So the
people that like send out the signal that goes to our television.
Yes, like they're the people that get all the material and they make us view it.
And you're in New York, so now, and this was not electronically transferred like it was today. So
yes.
I would assume that just made all the deadlines just that more crazy, because you're depending on FedEx. Like, what? How does this even work?
Exactly. It was like carrier pigeon, smoke signal. We just, exactly. It was, and I even confirmed that with somebody, because it seems like a dream. I thought, did I dream that we didn't have an electronic way to get this material out? But we did not. We didn't.
I can't even process that. So when you said there was someone, a guy you worked with all the time in LA, he was the net center guy that you're referring to.
He was the ops. Yeah, he was the guy out in operations center, and he ran the whole show, and he would get everything and piece it together and make us look pretty.
Okay, so that was Foxbox first. Wait, Foxbox was first.
That
right?
was Fox.
Then,
that was Foxbox, right? Yeah. Yes.
One of the other questions we had shout out to Matthew Voss for this question. What legal issues, if any, did you run into with promotions in regard to altering or reusing footage from the shows? Because they would take the footage and then sometimes there was like Batman or like other characters from other shows. So was that a whole juggle of legal things?
You mean, in terms of it was very clean in that sense, because when we ran a promotion, it was for something extremely specific. So the parameters on that were like a nice, neat little box. Where we had to kind of, it was weird. It was like the sales team was doing their thing to make sure we could live and eat and everybody had a network, and that meant that the salespeople and the advertisers also had a say. So you had comments coming from Uptown, Standards and Practices, the Uptown team in general, the sales team, and then, of course, the producers and the creatives who really felt the most attached to it because they were the ones making it go. So it was a lot of opinions in one pot. We had this big Turtles promotion one time, and I don't remember what the specifics of it was. I just remember it was the Turtles, and it was a lot of work, and it was long interstitial segments, and we sent it uptown in all of its glory. And the feedback we got was, I don't like the color of the curtains in the background.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yes. And it was like, do you have any idea the domino effect that creates? For days having to fix. It was stuff like
Steve's
that.
Steve's a storyboard artist. He understands this. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve. So the whole joke about no one understands a rough cut. I mean, it was like that. We would get comments like that would make your head spin.
That's bonkers.
Yes, it was. It was bonkers.
Because sometimes I think, and this is true in all business, people want to feel like they said something, they worked that day, and they say something that they don't realize the implications of. Like,
right.
Oh.
Yes.
Did you so you're dealing with all these opinions. Did you also have to deal with like letters from like angry organizations or moms who said, why did you do this? Or were you spared the hate mail?
No, we were not, and we didn't get a whole bunch of it, but honestly, it's a great question. I didn't expect it. And it's true. If something came in, we were so cognizant and aware of what, because there were things that were going to make people angry and we wouldn't have known it. We wouldn't have known it. So
you can't
you
think
would
of
have no
everyone's
idea.
trigger.
You cannot. And every once in a while they would get some sort of letter that they didn't like the way this character said this to that character, or the implication of bullying or misogynistic behaviors, or, things like that. And it's not like we could go back and, change these shows. I mean, it was hard enough doing what the producers were doing to flip them into our culture, to make them work here and be respectful there. And then you have to worry about like the PTA, on top of it.
Yeah.
So it did happen.
It makes sense that you were the one that kind of had to like take the hits for this stuff because you were the glue. So that is interesting that because a lot of people we've spoken to did not see that. Like, and as actors, we were not aware of a lot of that unless we went on the message boards. But I didn't know how to do that. So
that stuff, I feel like it came through legal. I'm trying to remember because I don't exactly remember the pinpoint on where it came from, but I feel like it was legal that we would get that information from.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, dealing with legal is a whole other side of this that we haven't really talked about. I mean, I assume mistakes happened and there must have been times when legal had to get involved. I mean, right? I don't know what you can speak about. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but like, or just difficult situations. I mean, there were issues with toys and recalls, and I mean stuff that's public. But I would assume that everyone kind of had to jump in when things like that happened.
I think you're right about that, and off the top of my head, I cannot remember a specific situation where we got our asses kicked because we did something totally off the mark, but 100% that happened. It did, because it wasn't always a straight line. And you're right. Like, it just wasn't always a straight line with that.
Or a commercial would accidentally air at too close to the show something was for. Like, I think that stuff, like accidents happen like that.
Yeah, and it could. And especially.
And there's fines and there's,
Right. And you also have like, I think we didn't talk. I'm kind of switching subjects, but
That's
you just
fine.
you triggered me a little bit on something, like that whole idea that you're running all these promos for your shows and you're trying to get to as many people as you possibly can. But in the end, we were almost talking to ourselves. That's why I felt like it's nice to hear Steve say, hey, I was one of those kids, because it was like our whole goal was to make this a web out where people could see. And I thought maybe these promotions would get kids excited off our network so that we could gain a larger audience. That was frustrating because we knew that there were so many more kids out there, but we didn't have the money or the resources to be spending on these other networks like other networks had. So that was part of our, that was like part of the problem, I think, that we had.
Interesting. Yeah. So that was your way of making them involved. And we talk so much about the toy aspect and that this company was basically a licensing company. So at the end of the day, if the toys didn't sell, the show didn't go. How much of that pressure did you feel, or were you just worried about getting this stuff on the air?
Well, it was a little bit of both and that goes back to the very beginning, which was your first question. I was also told that exactly what you said, that this was a toy company gone rogue. This is a toy company gone TV.
A licensing
company, right. And that they didn't necessarily need people that understood the business. They needed people that could understand the other side of the business, and that they would worry about the toys and all the stuff that really was the underpinning of why we were there. So it was like two different things happening at the same time and two different forces. I don't know if they always worked so well together, because there were us, like the TV heads like myself, and then there were the licensing people and the toy people. And that was the whole game. That was it. It was all about them. But we were so passionate about what we did in those four walls that we felt like that was the most important thing, even though we knew it was both.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's so frustrating about all of this to me. And again, I still can't believe this company existed, because the fact that they did all of those things is still a lot to me, like to have the licensing and all. I didn't know any of this was going on. I'd go to the studios and I didn't know about the Uptown office. I didn't know that when I went and bought the merch of my character, that it was the people I worked for that were making that.
Right, right. It's trippy. It is. It's like a vortex. It's trippy. It was like the tail wagging the dog. I mean, that's really what it felt like.
And it almost I know it's legal, but it almost feels like a monopoly. But
it is.
And it is. And I don't think, it is. And it's a shame too, because you're right. All we wanted to do was make a good show. But then you would find out like, oh, well, those toys didn't sell, so you're canceled. And you're like, but we did the good work. I don't.
Yeah.
And that leads to a question that Blue Baron had.
Blue Baron, hi.
Well, hi, Blue Baron.
Hi, Blue Baron.
Was a network contracted to air a certain amount of episodes of a series before removing it if it underperformed, like maybe the toys didn't sell or something? Is there a reason the block wouldn't just finish the show off in a death slot to get their money's worth? Because certain shows, he's naming Magical Do-Re-Mi, Mew Mew, F-Zero, Ultraman, Funky Cops, like a lot of them didn't air all the episodes that were dubbed or that were purchased.
Yes, there was, from what I understand, again, this is my memory, I'm going back.
Long time ago.
This is a long time ago. I don't believe that was the case. And that was also not the case at any other network I've ever worked at. It was all about what performed and what didn't perform. And if something was not performing, it did not get the luxury of remaining on air to finish out the storyline. I feel like now things are a little bit more fair because they can bounce them over to other platforms to run.
Right.
Whereas then you just had to guess what the ending was, but no, there was no contractual obligation to finish something out. It needed to do its job or it wasn't going to stay. It wouldn't stick around.
Such a shame. Which leads me to my next question, because there's all this lost media. There's lost media of the promos. There's lost media of these shows like Ultraman. Michael Pecorello had Mike. Why did I call him Michael? Mike Pecorello
very
had
formal.
Very formal. Mikey
Mr.
P
Mike, yeah.
had some like episodes that never aired of Ultraman that he happened to keep. So we need to know.
Did?
Yes.
Oh my.
So I would get in trouble if I didn't ask you if you are hiding any lost media in your home.
Oh my gosh. I wish the answer were yes to that question. It is not.
Okay.
I wish
All right,
it were.
see, guys, I tried.
Yes, she did. She had valiant effort. I wish I did. I wish I did. I don't. I don't.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Steve.
I have a question,
Yes.
based on the topic we were just talking about before. I don't know how hands-on you were with determining the schedule for Foxbox for 4Kids TV. I'm curious about what goes into that. What's the mindset? Because we know like there's some like the first hour is not like where you put your main draw show. But I'm curious if you remember at all what into that. If you had a lot of say in it.
I did. I remember it. The basics are the earlier in the day is the quote unquote less appealing. Not that we had anything that was less appealing, but in terms of ratings, that's really what I mean when I say that. And I know we had a certain amount of EI programming, educational, informational programming we had to air. I don't remember the exact number on that one. And that tended to be a little bit earlier as well. And from there, we tried to pair things together that made sense because the goal was to make the kids not want to turn the television off because we had such stiff competition that was what we tried to do. We tried to blend them together. And so it almost felt like, again, I mean, I feel like I'm talking about a 24/7 network, but it got that detailed. It really did. And that was the goal, to make sure that it made so much sense together that it felt like one big show and you just didn't want to turn it off. As many eyeballs as we could get was what we were going for.
Yeah. Gosh. And we talk about the eyeballs now and the numbers that you guys got, which today would be insane because of all, you're talking about the competition then. It was a couple networks.
Right.
Today, you're talking about streaming services, networks, computers, video games.
Yes.
So like you're saying, oh, it got canceled because it only I don't know a good example. This many million people watching, whereas today that would be a hit. Right. Which is so depressing.
Isn't that something? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. It was like a big lattice work of everything all put together. And then we also had the other part of it was figuring out where to put these interstitials so that you got the most viewership, which you tended to put them as close to the programming as you possibly could. They would be back to back because we knew this goes for any network, really. You'll see it if you'll notice or whatever. It's like their own stuff runs closer to when the show starts because people are tuning in for when the show starts. So that's how you got the most eyeballs there.
Right. And to piggyback on Steve's question, who would make that final decision on the running order? Was it 4Kids since they owned it?
Yes. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, right. Like we would make the final call. That was something that I'd had to do. And then, of course, Norman was, you had to check with Norman on stuff like that. And again, like Uptown was not invisible, even though they were doing something completely different. Like if Al wanted something, we all knew it. But for the most part, it was myself figuring out how to do this. And I would always go through Norman. Yeah. There was no like legal restriction on where we could or couldn't put something. So that was helpful too. Right. Not like, when you're running shows at night that are a little bit more racy, they'd go on after 8 p.m. This was like, what's the difference? It's 7 or 9. Right. What's the difference?
And I would guess that when the female-centric shows came in, that juggling of the time slots must have been more complicated because you're like, okay, so if the brother doesn't want to watch that, how do we get him to stay and wait? Like, that must have been a different puzzle for you.
It was a different puzzle. And there was no absolute clear answer to that puzzle. And by the way, that answers your question from earlier. We got a lot of flack about Bratz. And
wait,
Winx.
you mean Winx? You mean
sorry, Winx?
They did Bratz. Winx, yes.
Winx. No, Bratz.
Was Bratz? Help us, Steve.
I have a memory here. It's funny because that's like something we don't like talk about too much. Because Bratz was a show that was produced outside of 4Kids, but aired on the 4Kids slot.
Right.
So,
Oh,
as far as
I forget about that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was...
Go ahead. Go ahead. You know more than me.
I really, right now, I don't. Please.
Because I just like, that's honestly like, of all the episodes we've done, this is the first time where I just thought, oh yeah, that was a property they had. Like, I don't think it wasn't like Turtles where it was like a, co-creation there. I think it was more like just, that was a show, 4Kids gave it a slot on their time. But like, I know Winx was produced at 4Kids.
Yes.
Right. So that's interesting. So you had to handle the outside productions, which I completely forgot about. So have at it. What do you remember? Yeah, sorry.
I didn't. Who, me? I didn't have to handle outside productions.
Well, no, but like you were scheduling Winx, though.
Yes.
I mean, sorry.
And
oh my God, these two names. Bratz. You were scheduling Bratz even though it wasn't a 4Kids production.
Yes. Right. Exactly. So that, again, was one of those puzzle pieces, like you said, and there's not a lot of places to put it. So we just had to try it. We just had to try to pair it up with what made the absolute most sense. And those shows, Winx, I guess Winx in particular, caused flack amongst the moms out there because nobody had any clothes on, if you remember.
Yeah.
That was a little bit racy. Even though they tried to
cover it. Yeah.
They tried to. So yeah, that was definitely, we got feedback on that. And there wasn't a lot we could do. I mean, really, that's what it was.
That's so tricky because the same kid is probably not watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And then Bratz. Like, it just is not the same target demo.
It was almost like, if I don't remember where we put it, I would almost guess we put it at the end. Almost like, get through this, and then if you like this, here you go.
Streaming now on Peacock. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie are back.
That's hot. Loves it.
For a show-stopping reunion that will prove putting on an opera is anything but simple.
We're really good at this.
One thing's for sure, they won't be upstaged.
Good to have you back. Come on, we've got a show to do.
Paris and Nicole, The Encore, a 3-part reunion special. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
When you're on the go and it's time to refresh your energy, grab an ice-cold Celsius Arctic Vibe, where 0 sugar, 7 essential vitamins, and proven ingredients meet the pure refreshment of frozen berry. Unlike traditional energy drinks, each sip of Celsius is a perfect balance of flavor and function. So whether you're hitting the gym, the office, or your next adventure, grab an Arctic Vibe at your local retailer or visit Celsius.com to learn more.
So, okay, this goes back to the question I had about, like, you can't air a Yu-Gi-Oh! Toy commercial within a certain amount of time of the show airing. That's
right.
Correct, right?
That's right.
So then this is where I guess, like, who do you talk to and explain, no, don't air that? Like, this is where I don't understand the logistics. And this was a question that we got from a fan, like, you couldn't air the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card commercial during the breaks. Like, he's asking what the challenges of making sure that wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
Who does
we had to set, like, I was part of that. I was definitely part of that, but we also had to check, the checks and balances with the operations center out in LA had a lot to do with that. And we also had to make sure we were in complete sync with sales if they had any requests like that, to make sure that that didn't happen. So we had the schedule going on our side in office. I had this, little Excel, like, you would have loved it. It was an Excel spreadsheet.
Oh,
it was beautiful. Yeah. It was like calm to look at. Yeah. And you would sort of slot in what made sense to fill the network based on the programming side of it. And then you knew that certain things couldn't go in certain places on the commercial side of it. So you had to just be in sync with the operations center, the sales team, and again, the Uptown team, so that they knew if they were looking for something that it wasn't going to be between A and B, it was going to be between B and C.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a spreadsheet. That's the best answer you could give.
You're welcome.
You did, I know with the interstitials, especially in some of the promos, there were like a lot of celebrities that like Lil Bow Wow showed up, or I think, was it In Sync? Like, were you involved in some of the celebrity
I totally was. And it was, the Lil Bow Wow thing was one of my favorite days because he was just the coolest. And I remember, you're not supposed to act like anything else than how you would normally act. You're not supposed to take too many pictures, but I totally did. And I had this little camera and I didn't do anything with with them. I just looked at them at home.
Well, there's nowhere to post them. It wasn't.
The old days.
Yes, right. There was nowhere.
You would have put them on MySpace.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. And those shoots, they were exciting, and we would all go, and we would just help out and do whatever. And I ran around like a production assistant, and that was another thing. Like we all wore different hats at different times, and that was one of those things. Like me, do I look like I'm, that wasn't my thing I wasn't there to do it,
right.
But you go and you do it anyway. So you go and you help and you watch and you figure out, like, you already start forming in your head, like, all right, this one's going to go here and this one's going to go in this show. And then we're going to skip and we're going to jump to the next one. And you can it starts to form as you're watching them produce these things. And we also did, Ed Koch. Remember we did one with Ed Koch.
I don't remember that. I got to find that.
Yeah, that one's an older one. And then Spy Kids. Do you remember the one we did? One with Spy Kids?
I think we found some of those. Yeah, those I think we found.
And then we did the Guinness Book of World Records with the guy that blew up the balloons.
Oh, I don't know about that. Steve, you remember that one?
Yeah. Do you remember that,
No,
Steve?
no.
Okay.
What was the premise of that?
He was going to break a Guinness record, and we were going to be the ones to air this. And
that's a great idea.
Yeah. And we did. We went down to this balloon saloon, I think in Tribeca, and watched this person like blow their face off, like blowing up all these balloons, and turned it into a whole thing. And it was, like things like that. They were so much fun, and they were so different, and they were exciting. And they just Hulk Hogan. Yes, of course. I feel like Dave Sartorius might have had something to do with that shoot.
I'm pretty sure he mentioned it in his interview.
Oh, he did. Okay, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Dave was on board with that one. And then I remember that
William Hung.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh. I forgot about that.
I think Hagney worked on that one.
Hagney.
Why am I thinking?
Maybe that was
Sartorius, too. But yeah, William Hung, I mean, he was a big name for 5 minutes.
Yes, he was for 5 minutes. You're right.
And that was Fox, so maybe that was like an easy deal there.
Yeah. I'm trying to think
that's a good question. Like, did you get, because it was Fox, like, did you ever get pressure from the networks to include their people on these kinds of things?
No, we did not.
That's cool that they didn't do that. Yeah.
No, I haven't, I feel like they were separate, like even though they were not, because we were on their network and we had to go through their broadcast center. I feel like when the whole thing happened with the block, it was for reasons that were like business related. It was almost like this was us and that was them. And we kind of used them for the skeleton of what we needed. But in terms of the product and the content, we were arm's length from them.
Okay.
For business reasons.
Yeah.
Right? That's,
it's a machine.
It's a machine.
It's just, this is a question I don't know you're going to know the answer to, but I want to make sure we ask it for Nina Lynn.
Hi, Nina.
So this is a weird thing. The first Yu-Gi-Oh series was able to finish its run, but GX, which was like another, one of the versions of Yu-Gi-Oh, was cut short by a year. You might not have been there, but do you remember the initial purchase rights? Like, did they own all of it? And is that why? And then there's 5Ds. We have a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh questions. So if there's anything you remember about that stuff. And again, if you don't, it's okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I was not involved in that. And I wish I could answer those questions because I know those are outstanding question marks for a lot of people, but I don't know. I do remember, however, that in the office we had a bunny and a dog.
Yes. Millie. We remember Millie.
Yes.
Yes.
We had Millie and we had Mobion, the bunny. Mm-hmm. And then we had another little Frenchie that used to roll by. And then at one point we had a hamster in a ball and you would see.
What?
Oh, yeah. You'd see the dog.
I don't remember this.
Oh, it was great, man. We'd have meetings like in the back, and I'm totally digressing, but whatever. Here we are. We'd be sitting in these meetings in the back, and all of a sudden you'd see Millie go running by the door, and oh, isn't that cute? And then 2 seconds later, you'd see Mobion the bunny following Millie, and then you'd see the hamster rolling through, and to the point where people were like, what is going on in this office? Really? Like, what is going on? Yeah.
But see, and that's always what we come back to in these interviews is what a fun culture this space was. Like, yes, the deadlines were crazy and every place is imperfect, but it was fun. And like, you felt like all this TV, the music department was there, like everything was under one roof. And and it speaks to the New York of it. Like, I don't, are you still based in New York?
Not at the moment. No,
Okay.
I moved out a few years ago.
Okay, so the New York of it all was like, you could go downstairs and like walk to the subway together. Like in LA, we get in our cars and we're gone. Like there was something really special about this moment in time.
It was a moment in time, and it did. It all came together, and it was vibrating high. I mean, it was, and I loved being in and around all that creativity. It was different every day. Everyone had something to say. Everybody was super on their game. They had their craft and they were loud and proud. I mean, it was just a very, very cool vibe in that office. It really, really was.
It really was.
And then there's Carlos. Do you remember Carlos? Carlos? I think he was the receptionist. Carlos was just cool, right? He was just this cool guy. And every Friday or something, we'd have bagels. And he would, over the headset, you know, the whole office could hear it. He would say, good morning, bagels for breakfast. And it was like little things like that you just didn't get in other places.
Yeah. Well, Pizza Wednesdays, because the Turtles were recording on Wednesdays. And that was a big hit. Yep.
It's all about the food. It was all about the food. Yeah.
Like every good office. Yeah.
Exactly.
We touched on like the music department for a second, but I didn't know how much you guys worked with that. And because the music department was different in that they were they were writing original stuff, and there's a union involved in that, and the royalties and things like that. Did that affect what music could be used in promos and interstitials and things like that?
No. By the time that got to us, we were good to go with that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we didn't have to navigate that too much. And I know that is a whole beast and a bear unto itself.
Yeah, that sounds like a major thing.
Yes. I mean, and I do know that the music libraries that we had, I mean, when we would, let's say, go in to make promos, which at one point I produced promos and everything. We had, you have music libraries that you can pick from. It's a closed system. So they protect you to make sure you don't do anything silly.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked to Sue Shufro, and like just the way that like the organization of those libraries was so fascinating to me. Because
they would list them by like feeling?
Yes, exactly. Like shocked, sting, or I mean really, really cool stuff. But like we interviewed one of the editors there, Susie Goldish, who worked there, and she literally would go through all the Pikachu reacts because there was no system in place at a certain point. And she'd be like, Pikachu shocked, Pikachu sad, because for a long time she'd have to listen to everything. She's like, you know what? I'm going to label these things.
Smart.
But that's how haphazard, like people look at Pokemon and these shows. And I'm sure you get this when you tell people that you worked on these shows. And they assume it's like this finely tuned machine. But these were such early days that these systems were just being implemented. Like you were there, I think 6 years, like did you see major changes in how all this stuff was and also in technology? I'm sure you saw changes.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that what got a little bit more streamlined was people I think it was a function of working well together, because the technology was what it was, but after a while you just got into the rhythm, and it was just a matter of being there and working together. That's really what I attribute it to. And having good leadership. Again, like we had Norman at the helm, who really didn't miss a beat. And I think that's what it was more about. I don't think things changed all that much in terms of how things were executed. It was just a smoother execution.
By the time you left, though, were you able to deliver things electronically as opposed to mail, or was it still mail?
I don't remember delivering anything electronically.
Oh, you poor thing.
I'm scarred for life.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine how easy that would be?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't remember that.
I'm wondering what year that would have started. Even.
Me too. Now you have me. Now I have to look that up and find out.
I'm like, when did we transfer happen? When did this even? Oh,
yeah.
So tedious.
It was a lot. Yeah.
So I imagine because your communication was with LA, were you working later hours because of that? Or did they have to kind of adapt to your schedule?
It was like an unwritten rule that in just the position that I had, you were 24/7. Not that I ever, I did not have to do that, but that was what it was. Okay. Just because of it had to air. Whatever had to be done, it had to air. So there were days that we were there much later than you would expect, but okay.
Yeah.
That's what we had to do. It was like, all right.
It's the job. Yeah.
It's the job. It was the job. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just want to know anything you can remember about One Piece, because that was the most censored show we worked on. It was the show that was really made for adults that they tried to alter to be for children. Do you remember? Is there anything you remember?
All I remember,
show?
and you totally stole my line. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I remember about One Piece is that it didn't fit. One Piece didn't fit inside the One Piece. It just was too out of the box for what we were airing, and that I don't have anything else on my mind about it, but that sticks out to me. So I know that's not very exciting and probably does not help at all answering this question.
No, that's
but
fine.
that is all I remember about it. Is it was just.
But I guess what?
Yes.
From what you have said, though, I guess we could deduce that. I guess it did okay in the ratings because it
stayed on.
Decent amount of it, I think 2 seasons worth aired, and that's a lot of episodes.
It stuck it out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wish I knew a little bit more about that too, about how that one kind of got to where it was. I mean, maybe it was just such a hit that they decided to roll with it without, almost like sight unseen. I almost feel like it was.
Norman did not see it. Norman told us he did not see it before.
That makes total sense. Okay.
Yes, they knew it was a big hit in Japan, and that was enough to get it sold. Which is, again, it just speaks to like also anime is its own thing. Like, I've worked in anime long enough now to see like, oh, I think this show's for kids. And then all of a sudden there's something that I'm like, wait, this is not a show for kids. So it's just cultural differences and things like that. And One Piece that's not the situation with it. But I think we were dealing with cultural differences and things that hadn't really been dealt with by a big kids company before.
Right. Like I even remember little things like Funky Cops. I mean, I feel like there were guns or something in Funky Cops. Like
this was a question I had for you. Why? Why could they have guns?
I mean, it shouldn't have been. The only way you can get away with something as obvious as that is the placement of it, the angle of it, the fact that you say you don't see it be fired necessarily. Like those were the right.
It's ornamental.
Like, it is right. So that's how you get away with that. But
they
that's
were
still
licensed officers. So that was my question: is it because they're so funky and they're licensed officers? But so Funky Cops is so funny because it's like something that I bring up all the time because I'm obsessed. I loved that show.
It was a cool show. Yeah.
And it was like
badass.
a staff favorite that like, did not fit. Like, I think if you dubbed that today and like could use cursing and just made it an adult show, it could be a huge hit.
Yeah. It was cool. It looked cool. It was cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We need those are some other lost episodes we're looking for that I feel like just could be in your basement somewhere. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Quit holding out on us.
You never know. Listen, I haven't looked at my basement in quite a while. So
John Kalish had a few VHS tapes of that show.
Kalish.
Yes.
Kalish had them.
I know. See? This is why I have to ask everybody because you just don't know.
So who else had something hiding? You said one other person, right?
Pecorello
and Kalish.
Kalish were the big two.
Oh,
and we're still looking. I mean, there's been like some listeners who have like there's some promos we found online, but those are mostly already released. But in terms of shows, those were the 2 shows we found. It's so sad.
If I find anything cool, I'll let you know. I will.
Well, did you? And it does in terms of like keeping stuff. It doesn't have to be video, but did you keep any cool stuff from the shows or your time there?
No, like I know I have something somewhere. I do. I have to.
You must have a box.
I have to have a box. I just don't remember taking anything specific. I don't. Like for a long time I had scripts. I kept like random scripts from the promo producers and things that were just really funny. Like I remember one time we just couldn't. I worked a lot with the on-air team. We were kind of like this big blob, and we were in the back room trying to figure something out. We just couldn't figure it out. And I think it was Dave Sartorius who said, you know what? We're just going to have an alligator playing a guitar. Is that unusual enough? Because I think that's what we're left with. And we all just started crying because we were desperate for something unusual and different. And we just needed to make it stop. And we're like, well, I guess that's what we're going to do.
Done.
And those done. We're done. And like those are the kinds of things I kept.
In the national anthem? The 4Kids stars singing the national anthem?
I was not.
Oh, that's a classic.
I was not.
Just say you were.
I totally was. Yeah. I was, though, one time asked to go into the booth to go sing for Siegler. Yeah, with Kathy Borland and somebody else. And I told Siegler, I'm like, I'm not your girl. Like, I'm not, and he said, it doesn't matter. I just need like a woman to have a headphone on and sing something with these other two. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I went in, I did it. I totally killed it. I didn't kill it. He took me out. He came back. He's like, he goes, you were absolutely right. I was like, I told you. But in my head, I was awesome. I'm like,
that is funny.
I just found my new career. Not even close.
Were you aware? Because I was not at the time. I thought Siegler was really cool, and I thought the whole music department was cool. But I didn't realize that he was like a bona fide rock star.
No, he's like the coolest of the cool. Yeah.
So did you know that?
I did.
Because you couldn't Wikipedia him back. You did. Okay.
I did. I totally did, and I thought it was just the best. I'm like, this guy's awesome. I mean, really? Yeah.
And the theme songs were so friggin' great. I mean, that's great. One of the things that holds up really well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time to move? Skip the hassles of selling during the holiday season and sell your home directly to Opendoor. Request an all-cash offer in minutes, close, and get paid in days. You can even pick your close date so you can move after New Year's. Start your move at opendoor.com or download the Opendoor app. Opendoor is represented by Opendoor Brokerage Inc., license 02061130 in California, and Opendoor Brokerage LLC in its other markets. Terms and conditions apply.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du noch?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
I need to ask you, like, what you left 4Kids to go do, and then I need to talk about that because you work for my favorite store currently. If your LinkedIn is appropriate, not appropriate. If your LinkedIn is accurate, sorry.
Oh, okay. We can talk about all that. Yeah.
Okay. So in 2008, I
2008,
believe you left.
Yes, I did. And I ended up going to a sound studio. In Hell's Kitchen, where they did all educational and commercial and books on tape and all that kind of stuff.
Which studio was it?
New York Audio Productions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Did you ever go up there? Like, I feel like you would have been there.
Probably was.
Probably at some point.
That's why I asked, wouldn't it? Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I did a lot of educational stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably crossed paths up there and we just didn't even realize it, or I was out that day.
Right.
So I did that for a long time. And then after that, I ended up doing one other thing that was completely random. And then I moved out of New York and then landed at, I guess, your favorite store?
Home Goods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about Home Goods.
We can talk about Home Goods.
What do you do for Home Goods?
So I was one of the managers over at Home Goods. And as of this week, I am switching jobs after all these years at Home Goods. I am moving on to another store for another opportunity. But I did work at Home Goods forever. And it's so funny. This is coming up right now because it was years of working there. And it's such a fun store. And I love the fact that you love Home Goods.
We
can talk about it all day.
It's a different podcast. But like my best friend's teenage daughter is obsessed with Home Goods. And when she's having a bad day, she'll just drive over there. And she's like, it's my happy place.
Yes.
And her and my mother made videos for each other where they pointed to everything in their homes that was from Home Goods. And they would just go, Home Goods, Home Goods. And now we have the videos of them. This is how obsessed we all are.
This is awesome.
But I'm excited for your new opportunity nonetheless.
Thank you. But yeah, no, it was an awesome run and I loved it. And like you said, people come in and they would call it Home Goods Happy because people come in and they just like light up because they want to be there forever and they walk around and, have the time of their life. It's like retail therapy, I guess, at its finest. Yeah.
Do you miss television and that game at all? Or are you happy to be out of that racket?
I do. It was a big deal. It was a big deal to move out of the city. And at the time, like when I moved out within about a year or so, I got a call from a friend of mine out at the operations center in Fox at LA. And he said that they had an opportunity in New York and he wanted me to go over and check this whole thing out. And it was like this heart-wrenching moment because I just couldn't bring myself to commute every day to the city because I'm kind of far away. And that was the moment that I had to just say, okay, I think it's time for me to part ways with one of the loves of my life, which was working in television. Yeah, it was a tough one.
It's good to hear though too, because we talk about on this podcast a lot living a creative life and what that means. And sometimes you leave it, but you find creativity in other ways. And, Steve and I talk about this all the time. If we're replaced by AI, what are we going to do? You have to figure out what makes you happy. And this is a weird industry and there's no guarantees and but you had such a cool existence in it. Do you ever bring up to people, oh yeah, I worked for Pokémon, or do you ever slide it into conversation to be cool with the 10-year-old set?
You know what? I don't, but now I'm going to.
You should.
I'm going to give it a shot because I feel like it's got this resurgence, or perhaps it never went away. But I don't know if it's that 4Kids has a cult following or just struck. It does, right?
It does. I mean, it's hated and loved. But
why would it be? Why would it be hated?
Oh, well, because of the changes they made.
Okay.
So yes, the Americanization of anime, or the censorship from the purists. So but the tricky part of it is that it exposed so many people to anime who would never have found it.
Yes.
So it's tricky. What were you going to say? You were going to say, can you say something?
I was going to say, am I allowed to ask you a question? Because I know you're the interviewer.
Oh my God, of course. And then I'll decide if I want to answer. Just kidding.
When you go, you've been doing this for so long. You're very good at it. I'm Steve. Both of you excellent. When you go to the shows and do your thing, do you find that people are asking you specifically about 4Kids? It just feels like such a long time ago. And
it's
the market.
Why I started the podcast. Yeah.
Is that the whole reason? Because I did listen to your stuff before, but I wanted to get a little bit more information because for us, it was such a long time ago, but I feel like there's legs to it. And what is it that makes it stick around, that from your perspective?
It's that they took a chance on Pokemon, and I don't know that anyone else would have. When we talk to people like Brian Lacey and certain people who push for all people knew about Pokemon was that it gave kids seizures. Other anime hasn't necessarily done that well here. Mm-hmm. This company worked really hard and had put it in a crappy time slot and did all this stuff. There's so much that might not exist here without it. It's also that it was on at a time where things were appointment television. If you didn't sit down and watch that show on Saturday morning, you did not see it. If you didn't run home after school and see that show. So it's this really nostalgic thing for people because they raced home to watch it, or and the nostalgia is crazy strong.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I did this show, honestly, to talk to people like you who don't. I get all this attention at conventions, and I'm like, I wasn't working crazy hours like you were. I want them to say thank you to you. I want to know your story. So much more interesting to me than an actor who shows up at the last minute and reads the lines. So on their behalf,
thank you for that.
Thank you, because you put in the hours to make those shows. Like you said, you're rushing to get those tapes in so that it all happens.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen without you.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And that's very interesting. And thank you for answering that, because I was wondering that too, because I'm not on that side of it. I'm not as exposed to it as you are. And there must be something that just lingers and lingers and lingers. And that little clip of passion that's still out there for something that was so long ago, it's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, look around you because you'll start noticing, like when I'm at the airport, I start counting like the anime t-shirts I see.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, or if you're in Target, see how much anime there is there. And you might not even realize some of it is anime. But there is a world where some of this might not have happened without this. And maybe I'm wrong. And Steve, please correct me because you probably know this better than I do. But it's possible it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't taken a chance on it. So who knows?
Yeah, I would say Pokemon really kind of kicked off the anime bubble that would be at its biggest at the time in the early 2000s. Like, I think Pokemon being a huge success, networks, television stations are like, okay, it's like, what anime can we get? Because there's something here. And there was a bunch of success stories, and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh are two of them, and that's 4Kids right there. So they were, they were hitting gold at that moment. But yeah, I think Pokemon, I would say, like, because anime was always niche. It was always, because I think a lot of people, maybe the generation before me, or even people around my age, always talked about anime like, oh, that was the weird stuff you would find in the video store, and it's like borderline pornography and all that other stuff. That's the reputation it had. And then, Pokemon came in and just was like, oh, there's all these these opportunities, all this new television that could be on our channels. Because by then, it's like, I think what was great about that time, we're talking about appointment television, but also for people that couldn't buy DVDs or rent videos and all that, there was anime on television to watch. So that was, and it's a lot of people's, it's their gateway into that. Like, people that are still anime fans to this day probably started with something that they were seeing on TV, whether it be 4Kids or something else.
And it was on free television, and the barrier to entry, there was no economic barrier to entry with Pokemon specifically. And even the cards were not so expensive that kids could have some. And that's a huge thing. Like, I hadn't thought of that.
I hadn't thought of that either. And that is a really big deal, because everyone's on equal playing ground at that point.
And because the card packs are random, you might get a really exciting card, even if you're only can afford to buy one pack.
That participation thing is huge. I mean, that's a really, I think you just solved the world's problems there.
Oh, send me to the Middle East right now. I'm ready. Yeah, I'm so ready. Well, no.
Armed with anime.
Honestly, this was such an interesting part of the business to learn about, Laura. So thank you. Guess I've never asked you this, because I do ask artists when I meet them, like, how much of your talent, how much of what you do today is taught and how much is innate? Like, were you just able to draw at 6?
I don't think anyone's ever, no one's drawing well at 6. I think there's just signs of like, oh, okay, there's more to this there. It's not just like they're paying attention to form or colors and all that. I'm pretty sure I implement tons of things that I was taught, but maybe it's just subconscious now. I think I observe a lot. I think I just see like, oh, like this works and something else, I'll just try using it. And I don't know, great artists steal, as they always say. But
I guess like this kid I met this weekend, the drawing they made had depth and understood light. And those are the two things I feel like you can hone. Like, everything else seems like a natural ability, and then you just perfect depth and light, and that's what makes the difference. Am I making that up, or is that kind of true?
I think there's with the art that I make, I think there reaches a point where I'm like, oh, hey, I've never been doing this. Let me try to. I think it's kind of, sometimes it's my brain catching up. With me, it's finally, it's like, hey, you never do this. And actually, if you conveyed you did this, it would convey so much more. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's simple as that. But I've had a lot of art education, in my youth, even still learning on the job, when I can. So, I think you want to get to the point where you're not thinking about it because no one ever thinks about what they're going to do. It just flows naturally. But I definitely wouldn't have picked up all this on all this stuff up on my own. You know, I kind of
right. Well, especially when you're working for someone else, like like so Rick and Morty, you have to learn their style. Is there a style that you're like, oh, no matter what, I can't draw this show? Like, are there any shows that are really intimidating to you? Like, if you got hired on?
In terms of animation, I don't like. I would never want to like. I never want to turn down an opportunity. I think like the more realistic the proportions are, the more closer it is to like actual human anatomy. I think I'd be a little scared, but
okay.
I know my anatomy, but I think even like. Yeah, Rick and Morty is still like a tough show because I think I want to apply logic, you know, to like, or, you know, logic or basic fundamentals or just, you know, basic anatomy to drawing these characters. But I realized like, well, they're not shaped like that. They got like long noodly arms and stuff, and they're not really, you know, they're kind of stiff in some ways. So.
More importantly, how old were you when you had to paint your first nude model, and did you giggle?
I must have been college, you know, I think my freshman year, because that's like we had a drawing class and a painting class. And yeah, it was kind of like, all right, this is happening. It's it's just like, it's like,
I would giggle, I think. I think I'd still giggle.
I don't think I giggled. I was just like, okay. It's just
because naked bodies are beautiful, but they're also funny. Like, anatomy's funny. And it's not like a disrespect to the person themselves. It's the human body is pretty funny to me.
I think it's just like, yeah, I think just knowing it was a stranger, just like, and I just see them, you know, in all their glory. And I never, wow, it's like, oh, have I suppressed them? Like, no, I just don't really talk about that much. But
no, it just doesn't come up unless I'm annoying and asking you questions.
It just like kind of happened, and it kind of just like, you gotta just like pretend, like at times like, it just gotta be, you gotta look chill and just,
I guess, and I'm sure after 5 classes, you are so numb to it at a certain point.
You kind of do, yeah. You kind of get numb to it, you know, after a while, and just hopefully, yeah. But I think if you do have someone that's constantly giggling, it's like
I wouldn't. I'm not allowed in class. But I would get in trouble. Like I remember my friend and I took like an aerobics class together, and we were giggling because we were just immature.
Right.
I think today hopefully I'd be a better student of something. But even actually, no, I take that back because as adults, I took a wine tasting class with Sam Riegel and Megan Hollingshead. I mean, this was as adults, and we did get in trouble for giggling and talking.
I got trouble talking during a sculpture class where we were supposed to be making a clay model out of a clay sculpture out of a model, and I don't think I had
so you got.
I didn't have the awareness yet, and I'm like, well, I shouldn't be talking, but also I am loud. As friends call me, I'm the most audible man.
So you use outdoor voice indoors.
I wouldn't say totally like just out, kind of just talking to the person next to me. And then like the teacher like kind of like cursed as he was, I remember he was just like, all you do is fucking talk. And it was so jarring because it was the first, I'm like, oh geez, I'm in trouble. But also like never had a teacher curse at me.
Yeah.
Because college is just a completely different thing. So especially
they can do that.
Art school. Yeah. And I was just like, but also like, what, that guy knew me for like 3 weeks, maybe a month. And I'm like, damn, that's his impression of me.
Yeah. And that's not how I view you. I don't view you as the most talkative among your group.
I've mellowed out a ton, I think, for better or for worse. But, I don't know. I think you got to get me with the people I know. And then it's just like, oh yeah, then it's just like nonstop. But
I watched some grown-ups get scolded this week. I was, I had a convention in Las Vegas and I was bored, so I went to the bingo hall and I was like, I gotta see this. This is gonna be hilarious. It was not hilarious. It was first of all, there's an electronic machine, so you can get paper cards, and some people do, but there's an electronic screen that does everything for you. But you have to be quiet because there are people using paper cards who need to hear. So at some point, someone came on the loudspeaker, and everyone's like really serious. And there's like a group of guys who were just like trying to have fun.
Yeah.
And then an announcement came on and they were like we said at the beginning, there is no talking during bingo. Players are using paper. It was really like they got scolded. And you could tell they're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. It's probably dudes that are just drunk off their ass and just...
Kind of. They weren't douchey, though. They were like...
it's probably they're like, we're in Vegas. Let's have fun this week. I don't know why you would go to the bingo hall.
Okay, but I have to then say, as in a contrast, and I don't know why I'm sharing this, and you guys can tune out if you're bored. I went in West Hollywood here in LA, there's something called Drag Queen Bingo. Mm-hmm. And it was the most fun I think I've maybe ever had. And when you lose, you crumple up the piece of paper and the winner has to run around the bar and you all throw your crumpled up paper at them and boo.
Nice.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, on that note.
Love to humble.
So, it's just so much thank you to Laura Cohen for doing that.
Great guest, yeah.
Really cool. Wish I had known her back then. Such a bummer. Cool insights into this, and she got to work at my favorite store. But Steve, anything the people need to know?
If you like our show so much, I feel like you would if you were tuning into this episode.
If you somehow made it through this.
If this is your first, a little bit more information about us, go to our website. That's 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4 in that URL. That's where you'll find everything, like all the different podcast apps where you could listen to us. Link to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Once again, number 4. Go there, become a patron, get access to our Discord, episodes a week early, ad-free.
With Steve's design on it.
The logo.
Steve's logo.
That
the
I've
only
done for
artwork
the
he's
show.
ever done for me. I'm so mean. It is a great logo. I do love it so much, so...
Yeah, feel free to guilt trip me on our Discord.
Get it on a hat. Well, Steve works on other podcasts to which he does, and he makes art for those podcasts. But I think they make him.
Yeah,
so it's different.
Kind of.
Yeah, they force him. I don't want to force him. Yeah, you can get the logo. It looks great on the hat, T-shirts, things like that. Well, thank you guys for sticking through this. Go play some bingo near you, and we will.
Catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4kidsflashback. And to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.